Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Kellen Moore, you are a head coach in the NFL, and you have one heck of a mess to deal with in New Orleans. And I'm not talking about cleaning up after the Super Bowl parties before Mardi Gras. Also, which team made the best coaching hire in the NFL? And the chemistry is easy with Luka and Lebron.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
It took the longest, and yet it was the worst-kept secret in the NFL. Kellen Moore was headed to the New Orleans Saints even before he won a trophy in New Orleans, which he did. Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints, and I talked about this in New Orleans in the lead up to Super Bowl. Now it's official, Ross. We get to talk about it as a thing that has actually happened. You talked about all the things it would signal about the organization and the progress that was being made. Let's talk about the personnel, because what I keep seeing is, what does this mean for Derek Carr's future this season and moving forward? Where do you land on that part of this?
Yeah, look, if I'm making the decision, then Derek Carr's played his last game in New Orleans. The reason why I think about that is that you have to look at this roster, Peter, the salary cap situation, and you kind of have to understand that 2025 is probably not a year where you think you're going to compete, right? And so if I'm not competing in 2025 and instead I'm establishing a culture and I'm getting players acclimated to their new coaching staff and all those other things, which are all valid things to spend a year doing, why would I do that to evaluate a quarterback that's not going to be around for another year? I'm going to do that with a young quarterback in 2025 that could still be my quarterback in 2035. Will they be? I don't know. Probably not. But I'd rather do that. That's where I'd rather spend my time. So if I'm the New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr's already played his last game in New Orleans. And it's not because I feel badly about Derek Carr. It just simply doesn't make sense. Why invest this time into a quarterback that's not going to be there for your future when you could be looking ahead to your future, either with a guy that's already on the roster, a guy that you draft or sign in 2025, although that pool isn't very talented. And then instead go into 2026 if I need to and make a decision. Do I think that the New Orleans Saints will do that? I'm not sure. This is an organization that has always said that they will compete, even when they had no business saying that they will compete. They could do that all over again, but this is really going to come down to Kellen Moore more than it's going to come down to the New Orleans Saints.
And you know, if you are saying this team, okay, we are going in a different direction with this, we're trying to say, hey, let's actually do the thing that we should have done 10 years ago and just try and build up. What is the most prudent way to move? Do you say, hey, maybe we can try it with Sam Darnold? Or is it, let's just try and build this team back? Like, what's the most prudent path to you moving forward? Because finding the quarterback is going to be the most important thing.
Yep.
There's nothing that says in the rule book, I haven't checked lately, but I don't think there's anything that says you have to do it right away.
That's exactly right. I think you've got 2025 and 2026 to try to find Kellen Moore, his guy, to let Kellen Moore go out there and handpick his quarterback. The Saints, to a fault, sometimes have been one of the more patient organizations. You saw them be very patient, waiting for Kellen Moore to finish winning a Super Bowl championship before jumping out of head coach and everything. And then they were more patient than they needed to be with former offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael, who got 2 years offensive coordinator, which was 2 years too many. They were too long in the tooth with Dennis Allen before finally making the decision to fire him 2.5 years in, probably a year and a half too late. So the way that I look at it is the Saints are going to be patient with Kellen Moore as well. And a part of that patience is making sure that he gets to handpick his quarterback. So I think that the most prudent way to really go about it, if you're the New Orleans Saints, is let Kellen Moore make his decision. And if that decision is going to be in 2025, so be it. If it's going to be in 2026, so be it. But whatever it is that he wants, he should get.
Okay. Then why not let him bring his own front office people and make those decisions? Because it does seem like as long as the people who have been in power stay in power, there's always going to be at least some question from people like you and me going, are we sure it's going to be different?
Yeah, because a big part of it is that I think that this coaching hire is probably general manager Mickey Loomis's last coaching hire in New Orleans, for better or for worse. It's either the last one because Kellen Moore takes off and he becomes the 10-plus year head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and Mickey Loomis rides off into the sunset at some point during that, or sunrise. I don't know. Mickey might be a night owl. And then the other idea is that this tenure doesn't work. And I don't think 2025 is going to be enough to prove that. But I think that the tenure of Kellen Moore, if that doesn't work out, then all of a sudden, then you're going to a new regime to make that decision. But New Orleans is a team that has always been front office first and then head coach. So they're not going to bring in a head coach and then bring their guys into the front office. They're going to bring in their front office and then let that front office make the decision about who the head coach is.
You can stay up to date on the New Orleans Saints all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Saints on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Your Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, we answer the question, who made the best coaching hire in the NFL cycle? Before we do, a big-time SEC matchup took place on Tuesday. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. Now we're cooking with gas. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Or maybe you just forgot to bet like I did on the Super Bowl. There was a bet I wanted to make. Didn't make it in time, but I got it in the first quarter. Hey, that was easy. How about tonight's Knicks-Hawks game? Seems like something you might be interested in. The Knicks need to stack some wins, and the Hawks provide them with an opportunity to do that. Plus, Knicks-Hawks, the playoff series, recent history. There's some animosity there. FanDuel has New York laying 8.5 at MSG. It gets me choked up thinking about it. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The SEC has been electric in college basketball this year with Kentucky and Tennessee. Two of the big reasons why they faced off on Tuesday.
Huge win for Kentucky. A game where you needed to see some intensity. Coming off of that win over South Carolina, you wanted to see that defense continue to build on the momentum that they had created. Heading into this one, without Jackson Robinson, Lamont Butler banged up, ended up leaving this game at a crucial point in the second half, and yet the Cats continue to show grit, fight, heart, whatever word you want to use, passion. They were out there playing with it. I loved every single moment that I saw from Kentucky on the defensive end here today, holding Tennessee to just 64 points despite giving up a few offensive rebounds, some second chance points. This was a gutsy, physical win from the Cats, something that you have not really seen from them all season long. Talk about the kid that really showed up and played so well on both ends of the floor, Trent Noah. He has not really been a factor, at least he wasn't at the beginning of the SEC slate, but as the broadcast continued to mention, because of so many injuries, he was having to step up and play more and more minutes. Get this. 11 points, 3 of 4 from the floor, knocked down his first 2 free throws of the season, 2 rebounds, an assist, did not turn the ball over, 19 minutes of play, plus 18 in the plus-minus box score, led all players. This is what we had been wanting to see. We had been begging on this show. Play Trent Noah more. He plays with heart. He plays with energy. He fights for rebounds. He's a great shooter. He is aggressive, confident. The Mountain Mamba stepped up today in a massive way.
In NBA news, the Toronto Raptors locked up Brandon Ingram for a few more years, which they didn't have to do.
Brandon Ingram extends. Sean Woodley here, Locked On Raptors. Quick thoughts on the Toronto Raptors extending Brandon Ingram, their prized deadline addition from last week. to a 3-year deal for $120 million, a player option on that last year. And look, it's my job to have opinions on contracts, I guess. It's the world we live in. And my opinion is that it's fine. Like, there are ways it's good. There are ways it's bad. Probably means it's a pretty fair deal all around. Ingram only gets 3 years. He doesn't get a full 4 or 5 year contract from the Raptors, which they could have signed him to in the summer. Instead, it's an extension. They could have only gone 3 years. They could have gone 3 years and up to $48 million a year. They did not go that far. And I think for a player of Brandon Ingram's quality, if he's on the floor and he fits well with the team, $40 million might actually look like kind of a bargain. He's very good. If he doesn't fit, if he's not healthy, then it's not so great, as is the case with basically any contract you sign. It's tough, right? The Raptors kind of limit their risk here a little bit by not going the full length. Maybe he walks in a couple of years and you feel like, oh no, you traded a first-round pick for a guy who was only around a couple years. I doubt it's going to get to that. You know, there's plenty of time between now and then. Ultimately, Ingram's a good player. They signed him for a pretty fair-ish deal, and I can't get in too much of a stink about it. Again, if the team's good, it doesn't matter. It's great. It's awesome. And I do think there's a very real chance that this team is pretty good next year.
And the Pistons were shot out of a cannon in the first half against the Bulls, who could not make a shot.
Your Detroit Pistons with a just demolition job of the Chicago Bulls. They moved to 2 games above 500. Host the Locked On Pistons podcast, Kukiel here. I mean, the Pistons just completely obliterated the Chicago Bulls. Like, at one point, I thought they were going to beat them by 60 points. Like, it was horrible. In the second quarter, the Bulls went like 6-7 minutes without scoring a singular point. Like, it was horrible. The Pistons are playing some really good basketball. Obviously, the Bulls are tanking, but the Pistons are playing some really good basketball. Cade looked fine. Asar looked tremendous. He continues to play better and better and better each game. And not even just this game I really want to focus on. Pistons fans, let's think about a year ago. 28-game losing streak. Now you got 28 wins. You are 6th seed in the playoffs. Last year, worst team in franchise history. Just a year ago. Can't believe it.
They're done. We made it. No more resumes will be accepted. All of the posts in the NFL have been filled after Kellen Moore is set to head, just stay in New Orleans after winning the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars, his team hired a new coach. Tony Wiggins from Locked On NFL gets to join us as well to do an all-encompassing look here, Tony, because we always have to decide in the moment who did the best at this. So who was your favorite coaching hire of this cycle?
I think it's actually Aaron Glenn with the Jets. And the reason why is because he's one of them. And he's a real no-nonsense type of guy. He's probably more like Dan Campbell. I don't know if it's because he's a former player than any of the coaches that left Detroit or wherever. I really do believe that he has credibility with a very tough crowd. And I don't think he's going to be going by his press conference. You're not going to be able to New York media him into saying things that he doesn't want to say. And I think he's going to hold the team accountable through and that's what you need in a market like that. You need somebody who will make the noise go away and to just focus on the task at hand. And I think it's going to help him that he's a former player too. And a former player who's very good and now a coach who has a lot of the things that a coach might need for a team to survive in a market like New York.
Would your opinion of that change if you found out today that, actually he wanted Aaron Rodgers to stay in New York rather than what we found out is that the Jets were ready to say, thanks, but no thanks, we'll see you later?
My opinion wouldn't change because I would find it very interesting to see how Aaron would respond to that because of the fact that he is a former player. You know, the whole head nod thing over to Mike Tomlin and all of that stuff. There are certain people and certain personalities, and I think that I'm one of them, that regardless of who the person is or what office they hold or how high of an esteem they have, if you're just really a super authentic person, they'll come around. And I think that that's a very good trait to have as a head coach. Now, I know Jaguar fans are going to beat me up a little bit, but I didn't want to be biased about it. It's just that my personal knowledge of the team, knowing what Liam Cohen is and knowing who they wanted and what type of coach they wanted, it's a perfect fit for the city. But if I'm looking at it from the Locked On NFL perspective, I think because of that market, and it is totally different, and we can all admit that, I think Aaron Glenn is exactly what they needed.
Yeah, I won't even make you answer for the pronunciation of Duval in that opening press conference. Is there one that left you scratching your head where you just sort of like, they did that? That's interesting.
Well, the Raiders, but it's not because of Pete Carroll and who he is. It's because I think you're going to have to do it again in about 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And that's the only thing. I thought that would be a forever destination for a coach because of where they're picking in the draft. And because there's no more bottom. They've already hit it. So that did surprise me a little bit that they went in that direction instead of the young whippersnapper direction. But maybe also it's what they need because of their owner. He doesn't necessarily have a track record of being the type of owner that is a long-term type guy. So maybe Pete Carroll can come in and add some stabilization to the franchise and then will allow them to move on after he's done putting his imprint on it, which I think will be very, very quick and swift. They will be a team that's going to play way better than they did over the last couple of years. But I just think there's going to be a ceiling to it with Pete.
Is there a coach, as we head into 2025, we start to think about the roster building piece of this with free agency and the draft, where you go, hey, no one's talking about this guy, but there's more pressure on this coach heading into 2025 than the mainstream narratives may say?
Are you talking about new guys or existing coaches?
No. I'm talking about current guys who may be in a little bit more of a hot water situation than we realize.
Todd Bowles. And the reason why I say that is because Tampa had a chance to do what they've done in the past that bit them in the butt. Well, with the exception that they did win a championship and they got rid of Dungy and hired John Gruden. They tried it again with Dirk Cutter and Lovie Smith. And it seems like they have been jinxed up until they got Tom Brady to go along with Bruce Arians. And then they had a chance to do it again. They didn't do that, but then they just started blocking all of their coaches, even the guys who weren't coordinators. They kind of started blocking those guys from making lateral moves. And I just kind of wonder if a little bit of resentment will start to build with those guys and that coaching staff. And then if Tampa doesn't actually play well this year, and then people say, okay, you lost Canales and then you lost Cohen in successive years, why didn't we keep one of those guys, especially if Liam Cohen and Dave Canales turn it around? People are going to start looking at Tampa Bay like we should have done this a long time ago, because Todd Bowles, I think, is loved more outside of Tampa in terms of fans than he is inside of Tampa. I see a lot of criticism of him every single week. So I do believe Todd Bowles is the one that people are going to start looking at saying, oh, no, man, we made a mistake, especially if Cohen gets the Jaguars to the playoffs.
You can stay up to date on the NFL all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NFL on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the chemistry couldn't be easier between Luka and LeBron. How will Luka and LeBron coexist? Locked On NBA host Matt Moore and Hayes never had a doubt.
I never had concerns about the chemistry between Luka and LeBron. They're two extremely high basketball IQ players. They understand how to play the game the right way. Luka doesn't always make that decision. He prefers to dribble, shoot or pass. But together, they can really make the kind of combinations. I'm not worried about them figuring out the chemistry. That's not a concern for me. But more to the point, like everyone raving, freaking out, doing all this stuff. And it's like, guys, you already had a good offense and you're playing the Utah Jazz. Anybody else does this. Any other team adds a star, even a star like this. And it would just be like, yeah, no, it looks pretty good, exciting. But with the Lakers, is this the greatest offense of all time? And it's just like, can we just, you're playing the Jazz, man. The challenge is going to be, can they figure this stuff out long term? And they will, because they have Luka and freaking LeBron. But the offense was already great, Hayes. I wasn't worried about it. What did we really learn last night?
Yeah, I mean, I get the excitement just because, you have Luka Doncic. There's going to be a level of excitement if your team trades for Luka Doncic unexpectedly to where you're going to have that little bit, oh, my God, look at this. But it was a solid debut. It was a really good debut. I love the time that they were on the court together and the minutes that they shared together for sure. And there's of course, bones of how you can continue to build this thing out over time. But you are playing the Utah Jazz. Let's wait till I don't know what their schedule is off the top of my head. Let's wait till you come up against some better competition after the All-Star break and see what it's going to look like there. But this is a talented team, and having Luka Doncic on your team is already going to bring a certain level of creativity and everything. You add LeBron James to that, And hopefully, like this may be why we're hearing that LeBron may end up staying with the Lakers long term and is open to that. Like, I'm sure outside of the out of basketball things, like being able to share a floor with somebody like Luka Doncic, as good as teammates that LeBron has had, he's never had a teammate like Luka. So it should be a reason for everybody to be excited.
I think they'll figure it out too. It looked pretty seamless in the debut, but let's not forget, there have been issues over the course of LeBron's career with some your turn, my turn. This is not LeBron and Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis needs to be set up to score. And Kyrie Irving, back in Cleveland days, was a different kind of scorer, shooter, creator. Luka is your offense in the way that LeBron was the offense forever. So when Luka is handling, is LeBron going to be hanging out in the corner, spacing, cutting off ball? Are they going to run pick and roll together? If there's one shot and there's 8 seconds left, who's getting it? This is going to be fine, I think, ultimately. But I don't think we should act like just because they're both basketball savants, like this is going to work seamlessly every night against the best teams, against the best defenses. Because you need the reps together. You need the scar tissue together. You need the experience together. This is not the Olympics where you're just more talented than everyone else. The Lakers are not. LeBron and Luka are more talented than most, but you got to play 5 guys. This is not going to go perfectly smoothly from now until LeBron retires. But I think ultimately it's going to be fine. And finally, for a second straight year, the Super Bowl had a record TV audience. Super Bowl 59 averaged a record 127.7 million U.S. viewers across television and streaming platforms. The game was televised by Fox, Fox Deportes, and Telemundo, and streamed on Tubi, as well as the NFL's digital platforms. Kendrick Lamar also had the largest halftime show audience ever, as if Drake had any more L's to take. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, are the Cleveland Cavaliers really in the same class with Boston? Like, good enough to beat them in a 7-game series? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.